All right, next. This is a great headline. The End of Famine. So I think it was in Ridley's book, I found his last one, or maybe in The Rational Optimist. Famine was quite widespread in Europe in the 20th century, far more than people generally remember, realize. I mean, Holland went through terrible famines, the Scandinavian countries, and of course in Great Britain in the late 1800s, the Irish famine was a specter that haunted the entire world's population until extraordinarily recently. And the news on that front is astoundingly positive. No one starves anymore except for political reasons, essentially. So forced starvation, planned starvation, but not accidental. So
that's correct. So in the late 1800s, we started understanding agriculture and agricultural productivity much more than before. Not only did we introduce new technologies, better plows and so forth, but we also discovered that guano, which is just bird pooping, bird poop from South America, contained so many nutrients, especially phosphorus, that when it was sprinkled all over the late 19th century agricultural land, it could actually increase yields tremendously. And then when we started running out of guano, yet another example of human ingenuity, we started producing synthetic fertilizers full of, I believe it's nitrogen and phosphorus and so forth. Now, that wasn't the last when it came to human ingenuity. We started also toying with the genes of different plants, which led to a new, sturdier, and more productive wheat varieties in the 70s by a man called John Borlaug. John Borlaug,
right, who saved more people than any other person who ever lived, in all likelihood.
That's exactly right. So instead, it's quite interesting. Just as people were starting to be really worried about this population growth, especially in China and India, people immediately started working on the ways to solve the problem. And so, the population bomb comes out in 1968, and right about that time, into the early 70s, you have Borlaug introducing these new varieties, wheat varieties, into Bangladesh and India and China and elsewhere. And of course, food production skyrockets. India today is a major exporter of food. Now, these were people who were starving by tens of millions. When I was growing up in the 1980s, I remember being terrified by the images of starving people, starving children in East Africa, in the Horn of Africa.
And today, now you say, this is so unbelievable. The world's poorest region, sub-Saharan Africa, now enjoys access to food in volumes that are equivalent to Portugal in the 1960s. Now that's a very small amount of time from the 1960s to now, well within living memory of many people. One of the richest countries in the world had the same amount of food per capita as the poorest part of the world does now. Stunning, absolutely remarkable.
That's right.
And so positive, so good.
Yeah, so today, access to calories in Africa is roughly 2,400 calories per person per day. Now, obviously, not everybody gets it. There are serious problems in Africa still. You do still have conflict and so forth, and people do get to starve. But the widespread starvation because you couldn't produce enough food, that doesn't happen anymore. And that's obviously a tremendously positive step forward. In fact, many African countries are beginning to experience the problem of obesity, especially in urban centers. Now, if somebody told you that 50 years ago, you would have said, you're high.
Right. And so the problem in 100 years is that we're going to have nothing but fat people, and there'll be far too few of them.
Yeah.